and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
And you got Luke.
Luke, we're tackling one of the great mysteries in life. Why do leaves change color?
Well, this is one of life's great mysteries.
Hey, man, I've never known this answer.
So this was a write-in, wasn't it? Or was it not a write-in?
I think this was a write-in, actually. So you're welcome, person who wrote in and requested this episode.
And probably
Person
are still
or
waiting
people.
on stickers.
Oh, my goodness. They are probably... I don't even want to get into it. Luke, where do leaves colors come from? Do you want me to talk about it, or do you know this?
I know this. You can talk about it, but before we talk about like leaves colors, so let's talk about. So you're making this broad assumption, James, that all trees
All
have
people
leaves.
know what leaves are. Oh.
Yeah, you're making this broad assumption, but there's actually trees that don't have leaves.
Go ahead, please.
So we got to back up. We got to back up.
evergreens?
We got to back with the So there's two primary categories of trees. And the first one is a deciduous tree. These are trees that lose their leaves, their green color. They change to orange and yellow and all the beautiful colors of the rainbow in fall. And they do this each and every season. Do you call it autumn or fall?
It depends on how fancy I want to feel.
Okay. Good answer. The other one is I knew an autumn growing up, so we never used the word autumn to describe fall because I knew an autumn growing up. It would be kind of weird. So
that's fair.
The other one is called an evergreen, and these are the ones that everybody hates. Little piney green ones. They poke you whenever because a Christmas tree essentially.
Yeah, I like Christmas trees.
But they stab you and like they kill your grass, and it's like they're super. So the reason why evergreens are called evergreens is they always stay green. So their needles that they still do photosynthesis and all that stuff we're going to talk about a little bit later, just like everything else. They still have the stuff that makes leaves change color in it, but there's a thicker, waxier coating on the outside of a pine needle, essentially, and that prevents it from having to drop the needles, even though there's about a gazillion of them at my dad's house that I have to rake up every now and then. They still do fall off, but not as often or as regularly as a deciduous tree.
You're really a good son.
I do. I am. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. All right. So leaf colors, Luke. Can I get into that now?
Yes, you can. More? No, you're good. That's all I had.
You want to talk about the trees around the world and the different types of trees there are?
No, there's basically two types. There's all kinds of subcategories, all the genuses and all those different variations.
Knowing all the trees. Okay. Leaf colors come from something called pigments, Luke. You missed my pig nose.
I know I saw the pig nose, but I don't think that's what it's a different thing.
Pigments, they're a natural substance produced by leaves and the leaf cells. There are 3 pigments that color leaves. One is chlorophyll. It's green.
Mm-hmm.
The other 2 I can't pronounce. One is carotenoid.
You nailed it. That's it.
Carotenoid. Yellow, orange, and brown come from that. And then this is the tough one. The anthocyanin is red. So that's where red comes from. So it's really interesting how these all kind of balance out. So the chlorophyll is like really the most important of the 3, not because it makes things pretty and green, but because without chlorophyll, if we go back to our basic biology courses, without it in the leaves, the trees wouldn't be able to turn sunlight into food, and then the trees would die, and then we wouldn't be able to produce oxygen, and then we would die.
The planet itself would cease to exist without chlorophyll.
Thank you, chlorophyll. The second one, yellow, orange, and brown carotenoids, create those bright yellows and oranges, like the really pretty colors of fall or autumn, as well as those kind of colors in fruits and vegetables. So things like corns and carrots
and pumpkins
and bananas and stuff like that all get that color because of this substance, this pigment inside of them.
And fun fact, that pigment is always there.
Oh, you're ruining it.
You just can't see it whenever the green pigment is active. Whenever chlorophyll is active, you just don't see it. It's always there.
That for sure it is. And then there's the other one that does the reds. So that would do things like cranberries and apples and all those, but also the very rare red leaves of autumn, right? That seems like there's far less red leaves, right?
I think it all depends. I mean,
It does, and we'll get into that
we've
later.
talked about my color blindness a little bit.
Oh,
But
I guess it really. You're like,
yeah,
why is every leaf brown all the time?
they're not always brown. Jerk.
Okay, so chlorophyll and carotenoids are in leaf cells all the time during the growing season, like you were saying. But the chlorophyll covers the carotenoid, which is interesting. That's why summer leaves are green, not the pretty yellow or orange colors. Most of the red pigment are actually produced only in autumn, and that's only under certain conditions. And not all trees can actually contain that anthocyanin pigment. And we'll get into how that works here later on. So the next thing that I had is, how do leaves change color? Do you have info on that? Do you want me to talk about that?
I got a little bit on it on like what happens with the chlorophyll process, and then
yeah,
like
let's
the time
talk
of year.
about that.
So inside of plant cells, there are small or organelles called chloroplasts, which, and I remember this back from like 5th grade.
I remember having to draw out the cells with the different bits in them. Yeah.
And again, this is still kind of amazing to me. So, which store the energy of the sun. So it's like they're Superman essentially. They absorb the energy of the sun just like Superman does. And then what they do is they actually, during the photosynthesis process, and this is why it's green, they actually absorb blue and red light waves and reflect green light waves, making plants appear green.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Huh?
That is really interesting.
During
like optics.
During photosynthesis, plants take carbon dioxide, CO2 for the sophisticated folks listening, and water, H2O, from the air and the soil. And then within the plant, the water is oxidized, meaning it's going to lose an electron. And with the carbon dioxide, when it's reduced, that means it's going to gain some electrons. This transforms the water into oxygen and carbon dioxide into glucose. The plant then releases the oxygen back into the air, giving us oxygen to breathe. And then it stores the energy as glucose inside of its molecules for energy to grow and get taller and bigger and turn into really fine woodworking projects.
I don't condone that. This is basically magic, Luke.
It is. I sometimes we do these sciencey things, and like I remember this stuff like vaguely. Mr. K, 5th grade, teaching us this stuff. But like when you really think about like how all this stuff happens, it's amazing.
Okay, so the next thing that I had, or do you have anything else to contribute there?
I think that's all I had right there.
I thought you did a fine job, right?
Thank you.
Did you mention that, like, as the decreasing amount of sunlight happens,
there's
less and less chlorophyll.
Eventually
the trees stop producing chlorophyll, and we mentioned earlier that actually covers up the other pigment. So when that happens, the carotenoid already in the leaves that's covered by that chlorophyll can finally show through, and then the yellows and
show off their beautiful colors.
Oh my goodness, they shine like a diamond.
Are you a like a fall like watcher? Like, do you like drive around and like look for like the best leaves? And I always miss it. Like there's always like that 2-week period and you're like, oh, we're gonna plan a trip and it'll be great. And then like I cut the grass and I look at my trees and I'm like, oh, I missed it.
Where'd they go? Yeah. I used to get to see them a lot when I would drive back to St. Mary's more often. And it's just all trees between here and there.
The garden spot of central Pennsylvania.
It really is. And that was always awesome. But now, like, I don't leave the house like ever. So, I mean, I don't know what it might be. It might be winter out there right now. I don't know. So, not really. Before we go on, Luke, let's take a break for a word from our sponsor.
I have to assume it's like the National Arbor Association.
Oh, is that a thing?
I think it is.
Well, they did not sponsor us, Luke, but we had someone better sponsor us to take that, arborists. It's the Big Compute Podcast. Go ahead and take a listen.
What can computational science tell us about the tsunami generated by the biggest earthquake to ever hit Europe? Before you know it, everything is shaking, and shaking loudly. What makes the coronavirus so contagious?
It's the machine that literally will latch on to your human cell and ultimately infect you.
And what was it like when a massive act of cyber warfare stopped an entire country in its tracks? Their ATM greets you with red text over a black screen. This is really starting to creep you out. These are just some of the questions being answered every day through the power of computing. And on Season 2 of the Big Compute podcast, we transport you to the heart of these stories, giving you a first-hand look at how computational science is changing our world. Find the Big Compute podcast wherever you get your audio, or visit bigcompute.org.
All right, so in addition to that great shout-out and sponsorship, we do have one write-in for the day.
Who do we got?
We have Sandy U writing in. I listen to your podcasts as often as I can without a regular commute since I work from home and love it. Yeah, working from home is just
it is. It's the bomb.
Please continue to make fun of civil engineers and New Jersey. It's great.
I don't know who this Sandy is, but we will be friends.
I have a video game suggestion, but warn you that you may become obsessed and lose many hours to it. Factorio. My husband is wondering why I enjoy it so much because, quote, it sounds exactly like what you do at work. Give it a try if you get a chance. I think it's all about making the most efficient factory that you possibly can, which does sound pretty fun, and I could see how it could consume your life.
And I could see that I could do that during work hours and it counts as work.
I don't condone that
Just
behavior if work is listening. Sandy, thank you for writing in. If anyone else has any suggestions of video games that I should be playing, they want some amazing stickers, you have some suggestions as to what episodes we should be doing, you just want to talk about pretty leaf colors, go ahead and email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and we always love the reviews, and you can always tell your smart devices to play the Unprofessional Engineering podcast.
Awesome. All right, Luke, I want to dive into what controls the color changes.
Ooh, you really dug into this.
I did.
You really did.
Aliens control the color changes, Luke. No. So this is really interesting. I found this fascinating, honestly. When a number of really warm, sunny autumn days happen, but there's cool but not freezing nights. So nice and warm and sunny, not freezing, killing the leaves at night, and they come one after another, that's going to be the perfect formula for lots of reds in the tree leaf colors. So why is that? In the daytime, the leaves can produce lots of sugar, just like you had described earlier, but the cool night temperatures prevent the sugar sap from flowing through the leaf veins and down into the branches in the trunk. So the red pigment shows up to the rescue. Researchers have found that this pigment is produced as a form of protection for the trees. They allow the plant to recover nutrients in the leaves before they fall off. This helps to make sure that the tree is going to be ready to grow next year. And then the red pigments give leaves their bright, pretty red and purple to crimson colors as well. The yellow, gold, orange, that kind of shade of color. Can you tell the difference between orange and yellow?
Not really.
Not really? Okay, so those colors are created by the carotenoids remaining fairly constant from year to year. So this is because the carotenoids, gosh, that's tough.
Carotenoids,
that was much better, are always present in the leaves, and the amount doesn't change in response to the weather. The amount of rain in a year, though, Luke, also affects autumn leaf colors or fall leaf colors. A severe drought can delay the arrival of fall colors by a few weeks. A warm, wet period during the fall will lower the intensity or make them less pretty and bright during autumn. A severe frost, of course, that's going to ruin everything for everyone that likes looking at leaves because it kills them, it turns them brown, and then they drop earlier in the season. So that's stupid. The best autumn colors come when these conditions have been met. A warm, wet spring happens. A summer that's not too hot and not too dry. This one was hot, but it was not dry at all.
It was not dry. Oh my
A
goodness.
fall with plenty of warm, sunny days and cool nights. So if you meet those 3 conditions, that's the year to plan to go looking for leaves somewhere on a trip because they're going to be gorgeous. One fun fact for you.
Shoot.
Different types of leaves will have different leaf color consistency or consistently. Oak trees tend to be a red, brown, or russet, like a potato.
Okay.
Hickories are a golden bronze. Birch turn bright yellow. Poplar are a golden yellow. And maples, they screw up everything. They don't follow any rules. They live by their own rules.
Whatever they
and
want to
can
do.
be whatever they want on the spectrum. So I thought that's pretty cool that each tree also has its own kind of color spectrum.
It is interesting because I have noticed, you talked about the temperature affecting it, but like when we do have like a particularly cold fall, it does tend to be a little darker. Like it's not like the reds come out more when it's particularly cold. And I guess that makes sense now that I know the science behind it.
The science. That's what I do, Luke, is the science.
That is the science. So James, I was always under the impression that the leaf is on the tree. The leaf basically turns brown and just falls off.
That's science, Luke.
Interestingly, that is not what happens.
That's not science?
It is. Well, I mean, so
What?
It's not just the trees blowing in the wind.
I was trying to tee this up for you to like blow my mind.
It is. It's a very, very specific process. So you talked about, this change in weather, the cold weather, and less sunlight during the day. Daylight savings screws everything up. There's less daylight. It's colder. Are you a daylight savings? Yes or no?
No,
like you like it?
I don't care. I don't care.
Doesn't bother
way.
you.
Again, I seriously don't leave the house, so it does not matter.
I hate it. So it's actually a really specific process that all deciduous trees go through in certain environments, in certain climates.
That's a big word.
It's actually called an abscission process. And if you look up the word abscission, you can kind of find out what the definition of it is. But essentially, whenever you have shorter days, cooler temperatures, there's a hormone in a tree that actually activates. And what happens is, where the little leaf connects to the twig, right? There's that little kind of soft spot. Like if you pull a leaf off, you can see it, and it's nice and green and healthy, and there's flow of energy and
so much
food going back and forth. Well, what happens during the abscission process is this hormone says, "Hey, these leaves aren't doing what I need them to do. We need to get rid of them." And I saw this microscope picture of like what that portion looks like, and it actually cuts it off. It actually grows like a scale between the twig and the end of the leaf stem. And then it basically the tree kicks the leaf off essentially.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's actually called the abscission layer. It actually grows between the leaf stalk and the twig. So kind of interesting, because what the tree is thinking, if the tree had a brain, is I have all of this surface area, and if I don't get rid of these leaves and it snows, I could break. So like it's and all the weight of the
survival.
Snow, it is survival. And if it's not producing anything, it doesn't need it. And if it drops it, it creates organic fertilizer and organic material for it to grow. So basically, trees are cannibals. And they're cannibals of themselves, if you think about it. So they drop their leaves off, and then they themselves turn into their food.
That's I bite gross. My nails. Does that make me a cannibal of myself?
If you don't spit them out, that is disgusting.
You've never eaten a fingernail?
I mean, I probably have. I don't know if I would admit it on a worldwide global podcast. I don't know if I'd admit that, but
There you go, everyone. Now you know something about me. That is gross that trees are cannibals.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. Like the circle of life, or the self-contained circle of life, is really interesting.
Very interesting.
Huh. A couple fun facts for you, Luke.
What do you got?
What was the name of that thing, the layer that you were talking about?
Abscission process.
Abscission process. So some of us are dum-dums, and we call that the separation layer, okay? And something that they wanted to point out, the internet's wanted to point out, is that oak leaves are the exception. The separation layer, or abscission process, never fully detaches the dead oak leaves, and they remain on the tree through winter. and then they eventually fall off. And like, so those are the pain in the
I guess
bum
I never
ones for
noticed.
when you're raking, and
Okay.
then the next year you're like, where did these leaves come from? It's those pesky oaks.
I got you.
And then I was going to say fun fact number 2, the evergreens like the pines, spruces, blah, blah, blah. You already said this. They don't lose their pines during the winter. They have that waxy coating and they resist the freezing and all that jazz. So you beat me to that one.
Sorry.
Before we get into my next 2, one really interesting, one kind of interesting topic, let's take a break for this week's Luke's rant.
My neighbor's leaves. So here we go, James. I'm keeping this. I'm bringing this one home right now, bringing it as specific as I can to leaves. So I don't have a single tree in my yard. I do not. You've been here before.
You had one and it's gone.
I had 2 out front.
Oh, two.
I chopped them down. I had a telephone pole in my backyard. I had 2 telephone poles and I chopped them down. So I got no trees in my yard. And my neighbor has this enormous maple and then an enormous oak, and they kind of lean over, and it is so ridiculous the amount of leaf raking that I have to do. My dog loves it because as I'm raking the leaves, she chases the rake and I build big piles of leaves and she runs around in them. But this year was the first year, the neighbor on the other side, and I might do it this year, he put up one of those, it's called like a hurricane fence. So it's like a temporary fence it's like a mesh. And what he did was he rakes his leaves, but none of my neighbor's leaves in the middle go over to his side. They kind of pile up against that temporary fence. So
sorry, neighbor, take care of that.
So essentially what my neighbor does, he puts up this fence for like 4 months in like the fall and rakes his own yard, and then the leaves in my neighbor's yard just pile up because he never ever rakes his leaves. And he's
letting them compost so that the trees can eat themselves.
I know I have a fence, but it allows all this. So I might put up this, I think it's called a hurricane. It's a really fine mesh like fence that it's like a roll. So I might do that this year. So I feel like if you have a tree and your leaves go in other people's yards, you should have to go rake them. Just saying.
So I had these 2 trees. I don't remember what kind they were, but they had just these tiny little leaves. I mean, just like half
the
inch
worst
long,
kind. The worst kind of leaves.
They are so bad. Like the dogs would drag them in the house on their fur or their hair. I'd bring them in on my shoes. They filled my gutters up like multiple times per year.
They're jerks.
I recently just cut these 2 trees down, not myself because they were giant and would have smashed my house. Sorry, tree folks. I'll go plant 2 in their memory. It's fine. But my neighbors hated them so much that like they were like, "Oh, thank you for doing that." We were actually talking about offering to pay to have those cut down. We hated them
like
so
for
much.
you.
Yeah.
All you had to do was wait them out, and they would have paid for
apparently. I didn't know they hated them so much.
Oh,
so that was
funny.
really funny. But I do have a neighbor whose leaves come into my yard, and I have a Japanese maple that the leaves, they're like little clingy guys. They fall into my like undergrowth and they're just stuck there forever. Oh my gosh, it's the worst.
Okay.
I hate leaves. Okay, so I have 2 topics left. Do you have anything you wanted to cover, Luke?
Let's do your 2 topics and let's finish off with some fun facts. I have a few.
First off, I'm going to do a quickish list of the best places to go leafing and when. And so for those of you who don't know, leafing is something that really cool people do.
James and I do every year.
Together.
Yes.
It's like our special time.
It is.
Basically, you go looking at the pretty leaves so you can like go on a road trip or something to find them. So a lot of people think of like the Northeast as the numero uno spot.
It's gotta be.
And I don't think they're wrong, but there are other places that you can go leafing as well if making it to, New York or New Hampshire or something isn't really doable for you. So I'm going to start off with Bar Harbor, Maine. So in mid-October is when you want to be going there, generally speaking. Lots of little shops. Can go kayaking and watch birds. You can also go whale watching while you're up there. So
that sounds
really
interesting.
Cool. And you can do this in Acadia National Park. Another place not in the Northeast is the Ozark National Forest. So in Arkansas. Is that how you say that?
I don't think so.
Arkansas, 1.2 million acres of scenery, all the mountains, all the springs, all the rivers, good stuff. The Catskill Mountains in New York, another place. Woodstock, is part of the Catskills. So go to Woodstock.
Woodstock, like from the
Like
the
the
70s,
hippies.
the hippie
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
Cool.
for sure. Stowe, Vermont. It's called Fall's Color Capital. So not autumn's color capital, but fall's
Falls.
color capital. From September through mid-October, you can go like anytime, and you're going to see just amazing leaves. I was up in Burlington for this at one point, and it was awesome. Someplace that I think you and I both have gone, Columbia River Gorge in
Oh, yeah.
Oregon. Home to over 50 waterfalls, but also lots of pretty leaves that you can go and see, usually October through November. So the time frame's a little bit different for those ones. The East Shore of Maryland, so you don't have to go that far north if you want to check some stuff out. The Poconos in Pennsylvania, always good. One that surprised me a whole bunch was Taos, Taos, in New Mexico. So the Southwest deserts there, they enjoy a lot of color change also. Really interesting to me. Georgia has some state park there, and then Aspen before ski season, but after like summertime, there's just like one tiny sweet spot where Aspen is gorgeous, where you can see all of the mountains and everything, but they're covered in all these beautifully colored trees.
So I'm going to add one, and this is like an homage to the cabin that I have. So the Allegheny National Forest,
I know where you're going.
Right here, Allegheny National Forest is absolutely like gorgeous. So I have a cabin there, and ever since I was in like middle school, high school, I just like driving up in the fall with my parents. Like I still have memories of like it like looked like they were on fire, like just with the yellows and the reds. And I could barely, again, I can't really distinguish the colors all that much, but it was definitely not green. And I just remember all the trips doing that. So Allegheny National Forest, if you're here in Pittsburgh. It is
nice. That's right. One last part for me, Luke, is a way to attempt to predict the fall colors of trees. So this is something that's interesting. I don't know how well
Farmer's Almanac.
The Farmer's Almanac would be one way, but another way is to collect leaves, collect clear glasses, like glass for like water kind of glass, coffee filters, and rubbing alcohol. So you collect up the leaves, like say from like a red maple or something like that, whatever. You get those, you tear up the leaves. That's good. And you put them in some glasses, like bloop, clear bloop, glasses. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Next, you add the rubbing alcohol to cover the leaves. That's not rubbing alcohol noise. Goodness. And then you sit there and wait. So you have to wait for a couple of hours for the colors to really show. And I think that's maybe because you like depends when you pick them up and like, are they dried out or are they really fresh? After they sit around there for a couple of hours, the colors are super apparent to you. Once the colors are visible, though, you add a strip of the coffee filter to each glass, and you allow those to sit for another like 3 or 4 hours. And when you pull the coffee filter strips out, they're going to have absorbed some of the rubbing alcohol.
Oh.
So on the filters, you observe like different color bands depending on the leaves. And there's at least like one color band of color on each coffee filter that you have. And from what you can tell, that's going to determine, like, based off of the chemicals that are going on, assuming you've picked these leaves at a fair point in time in the autumn, how much of the different pigments are in there. So you're going to be able to tell, is this going to be an orange or a yellow or a brown kind of leaf? So rather interesting. I don't care that much, but it might be an interesting experiment.
That's a fun project for the kids.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
So good luck.
I'm going to turn my fun facts into a game with you. You ready?
Oh, goodness. Yes.
What do you think the height is of the tallest living tree?
The height?
The height.
Taller than me?
Yeah. Tallest living tree.
112. No. Yeah, 112 feet.
You're not even remotely
I don't know, man.
close.
How big?
379.7 feet tall. It's actually named.
Is that like the tippy top branch, or is that like where the trunk ends?
It's a tippy top branch. So it is. It's named Hyperion. It's named after a person in Greek mythology, and it's a coastal redwood out in California. Yeah, they actually discovered it. Crazy enough, You would think a tree this tall, like you could see it, like from like
you would think.
They just discovered this tree like in 2006, apparently. Like there were other world record height trees, and this one they just found back in 2006.
There's probably someone chained to it at all times, making sure it doesn't get cut
I'm
down.
sure.
What was it? 372, you said?
379.7. So this is taller than this is taller than the Statue of Liberty, and taller than Big Ben.
Boy, that's impressive.
Okay, next one. The oldest tree in the world. How old do you think it is living?
Come on, man. 700 years old.
9,550.
At least I was close.
Years. So it's called.
How do they know without chopping it down and counting the rings? And who can count that high?
Some carbon dating. Apparently, they got some samples off it. So it's called Old Tajiko. It's actually a Norwegian spruce located on the Fulajallet Mountain in Sweden.
Isn't Norwegian spruce a Beatles song?
It sounds like it should be a Beatles song. My last one, James.
That was a joke.
The widest trunk in the world. So the actual,
like, I can't put my arms around it.
Yeah. So the widest trunk in the world.
Are we talking diameter here or circumference?
We are talking diameter.
We're gonna go if it's 380 feet tall.
It's not the same tree.
Well, but I'm just using that as a reference here.
Okay.
I'm going to say that's probably 38 feet in diameter.
Oh my goodness gracious. You totally nailed it. 38.1 feet in diameter. So the widest tree in the world is considered to be, it's called Arbol del Tule tree. It's approximately 1,400 years old. It might be up to 2,000 years old, and it is located in Mexico. And it has a diameter at the trunk of 38.1 feet. It's at one point they did testing because they thought it was multiple trees just growing close together.
Yeah.
And they did some DNA testing. Apparently you can do that with trees. They did some DNA testing from different portions of the trunk and realized this is in fact one tree, not multiple trees.
Huh. Unbelievable.
I know what's unbelievable. Your ability to deduce that number from the first reference. That's
right.
You're a genius.
Some might call that blind luck, but I'll take it. I wonder how tall that one is. That would be
it's short and fat. It's actually it's probably it's like 60 feet tall. It's not very tall.
Interesting. That's a really odd tree. Well, that was wonderful, Luke. Do you have any other fun facts?
That's all I got.
Okay. I loved that. Well, this whole episode I thought was rather interesting. And now we are going to just wow people come autumn time or fall time.
I'm going to go hug a tree for sure.
I appreciate that. If any of you have any information on leaf color changing, if you want to talk about your favorite tree, what's your favorite place to go leafing, like anything like that, email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com. And until next time,
see ya.